a session with a lot of, I suppose, practical experience based on my journey as a lawyer. If I may introduce myself, I started my career as an in-house counsel for Petronas. I was Petronas scholar, so I did not have the chance to sort of, do my preparation and go into the world of litigation, because I was zoomed straight into, general corporate work in Petronas. Eventually I spent a great length of my time doing upstream work, oil and gas upstream work. Production sharing contract, joint operating agreements, basically. So I think eventually I decided to leave Petronas. When was that? 1990, sorry. October 1990. And so it has been a long journey for me. So I'm not young anymore. Teaching is my profession. I use sharing of knowledge, practical sharing of knowledge with my young lawyers, with a view to making them to be, making them to acquire the practical skills of lawyering, of doing M&A work, of advising on joint venture, share purchase agreement, amongst others, corporate commercial work, within the shortest possible time, so that you can sort of build your organization. Initially, I started doing this, for in-house training, but after some time, I said, why not share with the public, basically, So this is one program that I've been conducting it since 2008. Petronas, one occasion, Petronas booked me for 7 sessions, literally put all their young lawyers in the session. There are a few other listed companies, including MAHB Berhad, also Fekra Berhad. So we're going to discuss about M&A. When I started my journey as a pupil in October 1990, it was just a small firm. The firm may not have existed anymore. T. Taru and Associates. T. Taru, Dato Taru, was my master. He was instrumental, sort of, in persuading me or cajoling me to go into practice. Plus, I think not to say Petronas was not good, but I think I sort of aspired to be in practice, although initially in litigation. But subsequently, the thought of doing corporate work with Dato Taru sort of attracted my attention. Dato Taru was the co-sec for Proton, as well as for Ion, as well for Proton, as well as for HICOM. This was the old HICOM. This was the old HICOM before HICOM was subsequently sold to, before HICOM was arranged for its listing through a reverse takeover. We are going to discuss some of the examples to enable you to better understand the structure of the RTO, amongst others, in our subsequent sessions. So I said, how do I prepare myself to be a successful practitioner? Some of you are in-house counsels, but even as in-house counsel, you need to understand the nitty-gritty, the intricacies of all these transactions. At that time, there was no internet, there was no laptop. Doing research, it was difficult. You got to go to the library. So I purchased 3 law books. The first 3 law books that I purchased in my career when I started my journey as a pupil. I would like to share with you the name of this book. If you are interested in becoming a corporate lawyer, or I suppose even an in-house counsel, mastering the law relating to corporate law, corporate and commercial. The first book that I purchased was W.J.L. Knight, Acquisition of Private Companies. Acquisition of Private Companies. The second book was Grant Statement, Shareholders Agreement. And the third one is Sinclair, Reps and Warranties for Share Purchase. These were the 3 books. These were the 3 first books the first 3 books that I purchased. When I started my journey, and they are very useful. There are subsequent editions of these books are available. You should have a copy in your company's library or your own perhaps personal collection. Okay, let's go through the first module: share and purchase of share agreement, basically. Just some notes. A share means issued share capital of a corporation. Okay. It's a personal property transferable in accordance with Section 105. It's a property transferable in accordance with Section 105. You know, the transfer form, of course, is last time Form 32A. Now the form is referred to as, 105 form. A person who holds shares in a company is known as a shareholder. Sometimes a person who is registered holder of the shares is known as a shareholder. You know, a shareholder, loosely speaking, nomenclature-wise we call it shareholder, but legal definition is a member. The dividend is paid to a member. You know, why would people buy shares? Why would people buy shares? You buy shares for investment for return, sometimes for control. If you buy a small stake of shares, you are investing for the return. Which are the good companies to be invested? Which are the good companies which are commanding very high price? The most expensive price per share of a company listed on stock market is Nestle. Used to be 145 ringgit per share. I think the share price has dropped to 125 ringgit. But still, the highest price per share of any listed company on the stock market now is Nestle. The largest listed company on the stock market is Maybank. I think Maybank has crossed the threshold of 110 billion. I think last week was 114 billion. The week before that was 117 billion. Initially, Maybank was hovering around the region of 100 billion. The only company that has ever, maybe two companies have ever crossed, maybe I think one company. The only company that has crossed, the only company that has crossed the threshold 100 billion market cap on Bursa Malaysia is Maybank. But at one stage, Public Bank overtook Maybank as the single largest, as the largest listed company on Malaysian stock market. So who is the largest shareholder of Maybank? PNB. Maybank is a good dividend paying company in that sense. You buy shares of Maybank because of return, because of dividend, and you can sell it. So what are the differences between members and shareholders? Sometimes we can say, well, Tan Sri Vincent Tan is the shareholder, the condemned shareholder of Berjaya. Tan Sri Vincent Tan is the condemned shareholder of Berjaya. So I think basically a shareholder is a concept in business. A person who owns the shares, he may own shares legally, but in business-wise, we call him a shareholder. The legal concept is a member, basically. So there's a difference between member and shareholder. Now, how do you get shares? Well, you want to buy shares in listed company, you have to pay by way of cash. But you can also do acquisition of shares through swap. You can swap a debt with shares. Sometimes a company which is not doing well. Many years back, there was a company in Sabah, Ayokang Perdana. Remember? Ayokang Perdana was a company that was building a world-class, plywood, timber operation and plywood manufacturing operation. It was many years back, it was a darling of the stock market. A lot of people were chasing to buy Ayokang Perdana shares. And then subsequently, the company sort of suffered a problem and went into sort of scheme of arrangement. Now, in order to pay the lenders, they issued shares. They did a share swap by issuing shares to the lenders. I think JP Morgan. That was 1990, early 2000. There was a share swap done in which shares were allotted and issued to lenders. So that was a form of, allotment of shares by a company in order to settle. So there was no cash received by the company as such. Rather, the debt was forgiven, and in exchange, shares were issued. Now, you can inject assets, you can inject properties into a listed company and then get shares. We call it property, sometimes we call it business injection or property injection. Or you can also sell shares into a listed company, then get shares in return, share swap. A share swap. So I think you can use cash as subscription money to get shares, or you can use non-cash subscription. For the company secretary, sometimes you have to do different form to be filed. Injection by cash, injection other than cash. So sometimes when you are doing due diligence, it is important for you to assess. Say a company comes to you, you are acquiring a company, for example, 50 million ringgit company. 50 million ringgit company. Then when you do a search, you realize that the company has a paid capital of 10 million ringgit, for example, Of the 10 million ringgit, only 2 million ringgit were cash. The rest were other than cash. Some signals there, some red flags there ought to be considered. What happened? What exactly was injected other than cash? Was it goodwill? Was it, intellectual property? Or was it truly an asset of equal value in that sense? So I think you must be wary about any. You must be wary of any share capital issued other than cash. Because the value of the asset injected may not correspondingly equal to the value of the shares. I did one transaction many years back. Someone came to me. They got a special concession granted by MIDA. The concession, if they were able to secure, to implement that project, would bring tremendous benefit, and the company will indeed grow in value to massive value. So the company was capitalized at a very low level, 1 million. They said, look, we have got this company that has gotten a concession, special concession. We would like to create a holding company. We would like to create a holding company and then allot shares. The shares to be allotted, we are not going to get the shares to be allotted immediately. Rather, we would have what we call rights of allotment. Are you familiar with rights to allotment? In other words, say I inject cash 1 million, I'm entitled to get shares 1 million. Okay, don't allot the shares to me yet. I've got right to allotment. I want to transfer my right to allotment to two of you. So right allotment. So I think coming back to the story just now, can we, because we are going to offer the shares to CNOC from China, it was an energy project. We are going to issue the shares, we are going to offer the shares to Mubadala from Middle East, a few other entities. Can we inject this company that has gotten a license from the government at 100 million ringgit? 100 million ringgit. Can we allot the concession that we have secured? A company that has secured concession for one energy project in Malaysia, which, if being able to be implemented, would be of so high a value. But the company has nothing other than license from MIDA and the government, MITI and MIDA. Can we inject this company into an SPV worth 100 million shares? What's the answer? Possible or not possible? In Malaysian context, is that possible? It's possible. Because the company is a private company, the new company to be created is also a private company owned by them. The only duty of care, the only duty imposed on the directors of the issuing company is that whether the allotment has been done properly. But in Malaysia, there is no such thing as statutory valuation before the shares are allotted. There is no mandatory. So in other words, I could be injecting, for example, say, one trademark into a company, and I demand the company that buys my trademark to issue me shares worth 3 million ringgit. Now, if the company is not a listed company, it's a private company, there is no statutory requirement obliging the company that issues the shares to obtain independent assessment as such. Rather, although the directors of the issuing company have a duty of care to ensure the shares are allotted for good consideration. So in that example, I said it's possible, except the directors of the issuing company will have a responsibility to the company. But where the company was owned by a group of people, the holding company will also be owned by the same group of people. It was just a mechanism. So I think we injected the company with a concession into a new company, 100 million worth of shares, to be allotted in future. And then they went ahead to talk to a couple of foreign parties, with a view to offering the shares to be allotted. But I think ultimately, for some reason, the project did not take off. The project did not take off because of, some issues, fundraising issues, including conflict among the directors, among the shareholders. So I think, that is the position for a private company. For a listed company, the duty of care is imposed, higher duty of care is imposed on the directors. SC would require independent valuation to be done every time there is an issuance of shares to be undertaken by a public listed company, a PLC. So, okay, I think So I think you can acquire shares through share purchase, through share acquisition, through subscription, or via property swap or debt swap. Okay, I mean, and the whole purpose, the main reason behind such acquisition is to seek return on the investment if the company is successful, either in the form of distribution of dividend, paid out the company's profit during its trading life, or in form of growth in the value of the investment of the company over time, or capital gains. Now, most of you are working for a company, right? And how many of you are practicing? Yeah. Now, there are four parameters in assessing. If you are interested in understanding the mechanics, the parameters of assessing company's performance. I mean, you read, for example, essential about high performance, the attribute of high performing companies. What are the attributes of high performing companies? Now, when I was on the board of Sanabi, there was one session that was organized by Bain Consulting. They shared with us 4 principles of measuring a company's performance, which I think remains stuck in my mind until now. And it is also useful for us to use these parameters to assess even our own performance. I mean, your company's performance, your law firm performance, even our own personal performance. The first principle is growth in revenue. I mean, is your setup growing in revenue? Is your law firm growing in revenue this year compared to last year? Will your law firm grow in revenue next year compared to this year? For example, growth in revenue. So every company, whether Maybank, whether Tenaga, whether Warwick Holding, we must always cherish the situation in which our revenue grows further. Even our personal capacity, right? My income now, your income now must be higher than your income last year. Your income next year must be higher than your income this year. If your income this year is lower than last year, you are digressing, right? Yes. You are not performing. As simple as that. So first principle, growth in revenue. Okay. The second is growth in profit. Sometimes company grows in revenue, but cost went up faster than the growth of the revenue. As a result, the company suffer a loss, right? Not most idealistic position. Okay, so there must be growth in profit. The profit for this year must be higher than profit for last year. Anyone from worldwide here? From worldwide. This year's profit, 2023 profit, was it higher than 2023? The profit for 2023, was it higher than profit for 2022? The answer is yes, something like that. So I think growth in profit. So, for those who are managing law firm like me, profit will be the surplus that you reward yourself, you reward your employees, amongst others, The third factor is, we are talking about dividend here. That's the relevance of the third factor. Total shareholders return. Total shareholders return. Now, total shareholders return has 2 components. The first one is dividend. How much dividend would your company be paying? Dividend, I think EPF, PNB paid higher dividend, right? For 2023 compared to 2022. EPF, I'm not too sure, amongst others. Tabung Haji has not announced it yet. I do not know what happened, contoh. I think pending some audit, this and that. So I think dividend payment is cherished by all the fund managers. One company, for example, Rand Hill. Rand Hill has got the culture of making sure that every year they will pay dividend. No matter how bad the performance is, dividend must be paid. Half a cent, quarter cent, contoh. You're not from Malaysia.
I know.
Sorry, but I think it's a good culture. Now, I serve in the board of many companies, and most of the time I serve as a member of NRC, Nomination and Remuneration Committee. There is always a debate about how much bonus we pay. The company is doing so well, right? Profit now normally bonus is measured by way of a percentage of PBT, PBT. But PBT, after PBT is what? PAT. After PAT is what? How much allocation that you intend to pay dividend? When the company is planning to invest in a lot of projects, the dividend get compressed. The dividend get reduced. Dividend is paid to the shareholders. Who put the money into the company's operation? Who put the money? Not the employees, right? The shareholders. The funds are coming from the shareholders. The employee are the trust. In a way, the trust. I mean, we call it the agency concept. The employees are the agent of, the shareholders to execute the business with a view to making sure the business is run, profitably, create profit and pay dividends, So I think there is always a debate, basically. Now PNB, I serve on the board of PNB. I serve as a nominee for PNB for many companies in the past, Currently, I serve as a nominee for PNB in SP Steer. SP Steer. So I think PNB's policy, we have got from Khazanah, right? Khazanah is a fund company. Khazanah, Sabah. Is investment company or? Sorry?
Not really investment.
Operating company?
Yes.
But owned by the state lah.
Owned by the state.
Owned by the state. I suppose like a fund company lah. So, what I call that? PNB has got a policy of, okay, this is difficult, that for every of the PAT that the company generates, you must declare 75% of that as dividend. Maknanya if the company generates a PAT of 100 million, 75% is to be declared as dividend. It's a very demanding, parameter lah. If you are a damn good company, even if you declare 75% of dividend, it's not a problem. Why? Because for the following year, you will be able to generate, for example, another 100 million. 25%. So I think there's always a discussion between the management, the CEO, the management, the board with the shareholder lah. So anyway, so good payment dividend is one aspect that constitute a total shareholder return. And the other one is, what is the second component? Growth. The increase in the value of the shareholding of your company in the books of the holder compared to last year. So, for example, what was the market cap of Maybank end of 2022? Maybe 105 billion. Okay? But end of 23 has gone up to 110 billion. So there was an increase in the valuation. So if we were to apply the same principle for our law firm, for those who are running law firm, what's the value of our law firm now? Apart from the amount of dividend that we paid to the partners, to the employees, to the partners, employees and staff, for example, has the value of the law firm gone up or remains the same? Has the value of Maybank in the eyes of, in the books of, PNB gone up now compared to 1 year ago? The answer is yes. A dividend? What about dividend? Was the dividend paid? So I think a good company is always a company that pays good dividend. And the fourth one is, so I think that was the third factor that measures the company performance. And the third factor is, the fourth factor is strategizing for the future. We must always have a strategy to make sure the company remains competitive to compete for the future. We have got, at our level, we want to be a successful practitioner or successful in-house counsel or successful general counsel, right? We want to elevate our career. We want to build our practice. We want to elevate our career. We want to cause our company to achieve more. So what is the kind of strategy, for example, for a company like Khazanah in Sabah? Okay, how do you increase your performance, your financial performance? Most others. How would Tenaga compete? Tenaga is a monopolistic company in a way, Just like Sabah Electricity and Berhad, for example, And then how do you manage external factors? So I think you need to have a strategy, for example, Many years back, the gap between CIMB Bank with Maybank, CIMB was something like 1/3 of the size of Maybank. But then CIMB was embarking on various measures to build their capacity, including the acquisition of Bank Bumiputera, that was old Bank Bumiputera, including the acquisition of Southern Bank, that was Southern Bank. Then CIMB embarked on the acquisition of Bank Niaga in Indonesia. Bank Niaga in Indonesia was the first post-Asian crisis within Asia, within ASEAN acquisition, that was undertaken by Xiaomi Bank. Whereas Maybank, for example, in their quest to move outside of Malaysia, went to Indonesia in 2008, almost 5 years or 6 years later compared to. So in that sense, the journey, the acquisition of Indonesian banking asset was undertaken by Xiaomi Bank earlier than Maybank, for example. So, as a result, we can see even nowadays, the gap in terms of market cap between Xiaomi Bank and Maybank is getting narrower. Maybank. So ultimately, every single organization must have a strategy how to grow a business. You must continue to rejuvenate your strategy and to make sure that your strategy remains relevant. If you are involved in corporate planning corporate planning or strategy, and lawyers, I think most of us are lawyers, right? Some are business planners. As lawyers, we need to make sure that we are part of the senior management team in the process of helping the company to help achieve tremendous growth by sharing our sophisticated legal knowledge and assisting our company to perform better. As lawyers, we need to also be strategic in our thinking process so that we can assist our client in a big way so that the client can achieve better in their commercial dealing, commercial transactions. So remember that for principle of business, high business performance. Now, there are persons who acquire shares in a company with a view to controlling the activities of the company. Now, this is important. The hallmark of every successful corporation is that you want to control the company. When I left Petronas did not act as operator of any upstream operation. Petronas was still a young company. And in many instances, Petronas was also investing minority interest. A hallmark of a good company, you don't invest in a minority stake because you wouldn't want to put money into a company which is managed by others. You can just do a scanning of YTL, for example. This building is owned by YTL. It's owned by YTL Property. YTL, who else? Hong Leong, Petronas. Anyone from Sanabi here, Sanabi? Many years back, Sanabi used to invest in a lot of companies as minority shareholder, in Continental, in Dunlop, in Tesco. When you are investing and holding a minority position, you won't have the final say. The final say is decided by the majority shareholder. So sometimes your funds will be stuck in there. So eventually they make a decision to divest all their minority stakes, and they will not be investing again in a company they will not be investing with minority stake in a company. So you acquire shares with the view to controlling the activities of the company and eventually the cash flow. For example, there are many companies. Integrated Healthcare Holdings Berhad, IAH Holding, Integrated Healthcare Holdings Berhad is a big healthcare group. I think they are rated as the second largest healthcare service provider in the world. Healthcare, I think market cap. Anyone knows the market cap of IAH Holding? Integrated Healthcare Holdings Berhad. Can you just Google? Ada Wi-Fi ke sini? What's the Wi-Fi here? What's the Wi-Fi here? There's a Wi-Fi here. Ada. So this company was basically a company. It started as Pantai Hospital. Pantai Hospital is part of the group. There was a company then, Khazanah. Pantai Hospital was a listed company. Eventually, Khazanah bought into it. I think it was delisted amongst others. And then subsequently, there was another company. Let me see. What's the name of the company in Singapore? Oh my God, the name just slips from my mind. So the company in Singapore, I can't remember now. Can you Google? Sorry? Parkway or Parkway? Parkway Limited, I think. Parkway Limited, that's correct. Parkway Limited was a listed company in Singapore. Khazanah invested a minority stake, second largest stake in this company. The largest stake was held by a fund company, which was running the setup, the organization quite professionally. Eventually, the fund company was interested in selling out the shares because the time frame for the investment was up. It was offered to Khazanah, but notice given to Khazanah was very short, and I think Khazanah was not able to sort of prepare. To call for their board and to prepare to prepare the papers, the assessment among others, to be presented to the board within that the deadline. Eventually, it was bought over by a company from India. A company from India, I think the Sikh brothers, the two Sikh brothers, basically, You can Google the case. And Khazanah subsequently was worried about the way in which the new Indian shareholder will manage the company, because they were worried. And eventually there was a tussle, there was a corporate tussle between Khazanah and I can't remember the name of the company, the company from India. Eventually, Khazanah succeeded in gaining control, and the company was made private. The company was delisted from the Singapore stock market, and Khazanah paid a very high price for it. Basically, I think you can read the story about this case. So people were making some foreign newspapers were making fun. Some business journals were making fun of Khazanah, because Khazanah was first offered the option of buying the shares, but they were not somewhat able to organize the affair to respond to the offer made by the fund company. Only to buy the shares later on at a much higher price. I think the Indian party made a fortune from owning the shares and selling to Khazanah. I think there was a space of 4 or 5 months, almost 300-400 million ringgit you can Google. But then Khazanah had a different strategy. Khazanah had a different strategy. What was the strategy? The strategy was to consolidate Gleneagles Hospital with Pantai Hospital, acquire more hospitals in India and Turkey. 2-3 years later, we'll go for an IPO. So, IAH, part of that process in order to achieve sort of massive market cap. Subsequently, after the researching exercise has been done, the consolidation with Pantai Hospital, they went back for an IPO in a dual listing IPO, listed in Malaysian stock market and also listed on the Singapore stock market. In actual fact, the HQ, I think the corporate functions are mostly kept in Singapore. So the profit derived by Khazanah from this exercise was massive. So I think, although Khazanah seemingly lost in the transaction with the Indian party, in the battle for the control of, what do you call that? What's the name of the company just now? In Singapore? Parkway Limited. But I think it was a loss as one of the battles, but eventually Khazanah had a different strategy. So this is a clear example of strategy. So I think Khazanah acquired Parkway with the strategy of using that vehicle to be merged. Using the asset to be merged with other asset and to acquire for the asset. The grand plan was to get it eventually listed, basically, Yeah. Okay, so now in some instances, there are also instances in which you acquire shares, you acquire minority stake. Yeah. When I was in Petronas, anyone from Sarawak here? Ada from Sarawak. Petronas invested in a small company, Shell Middle Distillate Synthesis, in Bintulu. Now, in the oil and gas regime, framework of Malaysia, under product sharing contract, gas fields discovered by contractors must be developed within 4 years. Of discovery. You make a discovery. If commercial discovery, then you submit business plan field development plan, once approved, you must develop within 4 years. Anyway, with that development plan approved, you must surrender the gas field. So Shell was under a lot of pressure to develop the gas field for fear of having the gas field to be relinquished to Petronas. I mean, they needed to create a project. They needed to bring a project to consume the gas. So Shell immediate distillate synthesis was invented, was established. The idea was to convert gas into industrial wax. Dato Idris Jala, for example, used to serve as managing director of SMDS. So the technology in relation to conversion of gas for industrial wax was not yet proven. It was a fairly new technology at that time. So I think Petronas decided to have a small stake in that venture. Why? There's no way you can control, right? The promoter of the project was Shell. I mean, and Shell was still sort of perfecting the technology. I mean, the world or Shell, was still perfecting the technology in relation to the conversion of gas into industrial wax. But Petronas thought that, look, the whole process, we need not be a mere bystander. We should try to understand the process. So Petronas invested, I think, a 10% stake. Also, State Government of Sarawak. State Government of Sarawak also. So, what I'm saying is that in some instances, you may decide to hold a small stake. I mean, a small stake in order to enable you to have access to the technology, to understand what's going on in the field of, or sphere of technology in that sense. Okay, now on page 2, the structure of an agreement for the sale or purchase of shares varies based on the level of shareholding to be acquired. Now, when I first started my career, I think Dato Taru was a good master. See, every single transaction, there are varieties, there are different equations, there are different, dimensions to it. Are you acting for the seller? Are you acting for the seller or for the buyer? What is the level of shares to be purchased? Are you buying a mere 15% stake, 25% stake, or 40% stake? Or are you acquiring a stake in a deadlock joint venture, for example? Deadlock joint venture is a joint venture in which the shareholding between the parties are equal, 50-50. Sometimes, you may be investing in a foreign territory. The lawyer of the host corporation may say to you, according to our law, local must always hold 49%. Foreign party is not allowed to hold 51%. So you have got that precarious position that you need to safeguard. Yeah. Or are you acquiring, for example, 60%, or 50 plus 1, 60%, or 70%, or 100%? From the buyer's perspective. If you are representing the seller, for example, you are representing the seller, what are the concerns? What are the concerns of the sellers, of the vendors? Yeah, basically, the main concern of the seller would be to prevent you from being sued for any breach of warranties. You have to manage the divestment process, so that there will not be any breach of warranties and you get sued. There are many ways of managing the risk associated with divestment of shares. I think if you act for the seller, sometimes the seller may be a desperate seller. Your client may be desperate to sell. I was advising a company which was desperate in wanting to have completion. They were not doing so well. They were sort of forced by the regulator to sell their business, regulated business among others. So I think they needed to get the cash. How do you secure the cash, for example? Among others. So I think these are the components. If you are involved in buying of shares in a listed company, now a lot of clients may say to you, "Hey, Danny, we are buying shares in a listed company. You don't need an agreement. You can just do crossing through the stockbroker. You can just do crossing of stockbroker. What else you want to conduct due diligence for listed company? There's nothing to be conducted. There's no diligence needed to be conducted for listed company. The information about the listed company is all there in the market. Whatever events happening or occurring to the public listed company, the market will have factored that immediately, basically, I think you need to be wary about that kind of argument, simplistic argument. A lot of clients will do crossing of a block of shares of listed company without the benefit of any agreement. For example, I will share some experience after this lah, basically, So okay, so I think there in the folder here, in my folder, there is a note basically, just as a guide basically, yeah. So there is a extent of warranties to be negotiated. I think kat belakang dalam folder tu, I think extent of warranties to be negotiated by purchaser under share purchase agreement. A good lawyer will always draft the document for his client. In any circumstances, if you're acting as purchaser, the more reason you should draft the document. If you're acting as a seller, you can still draft documents on behalf of the seller by getting it drafted fast. Yeah, find it. Dekat first flyer. Is it here?
Okay. Okay. First agreement.
Yeah.
Excuse me, at which, what number?
I think for the one before,
Somewhere in between.
I don't know what page this.
Oh yeah, it's here.
What page that?
It's not paginated.
Not paginated. Roughly
I think
6-7 pages before the last of the one.
6. The 9th page from behind.
For the one, right?
Yeah, folder 1.
9 page from behind for the one. Okay, basically, so when you are dealing with the seller, there are two scenarios. You are dealing with the seller who controls the shareholding of the company. If I own 100% of the shares of the company, now I'm selling, I own 100% of the shares of my company. I'm offering to Danny for him to buy 10% shares. Yeah. Well, he's only buying 10%, very small stake. Very small stake. Ordinarily, I mean, I would give rep to him to say that I've got full power to sell the shares. The shares are mine. The shares are not subject to any encumbrance. There's no preemption right over the shares. Right. But he's investing in a company which I own 100%. Must he ask for rep and warranties over the company's affair? And Dato Azmi, could you please confirm that the company has complied with all the tax requirements? Hey, you are buying 10% only lah, Danny. Why is it that you ask everything under the sky? Among others. So I think if you are transacting with the controlling shareholder, you should ask for everything. You should not limit the rep to simply ownership of the shares. So whereas if I am a 10% shareholder, I don't control the company. Then obviously it may be difficult for me to offer it. Yeah. So 10%, 50%, 25% shares. Okay, when sometimes you are offered to buy shares, 25% shares. I mean 25% shares. Now, there is this concept of special resolution. I mean, I'm sure you are familiar. Special resolution means resolutions of a company that cannot be approved without the vote of 75% of the shareholders. Major resolutions. So I think you can ask for at least, hey, I'm not interested in 25%, I would like to get 1% more, 26%. By increasing your shareholding to 26%, effectively you have got the ability to control to block the passing of special resolution. I think 2 years ago, or the last 1 or 2 years, one of my partners, Nur Hisham, he represented UNW in the sale of shares to Japanese group. UNW basically acted as distributor for 2 Japanese products. I mean, one was, Komatsu, and they were doing quite well. I mean, UNW was able to sort of push Komatsu product in some territories in South Asia. amongst others. So eventually, Komatsu sort of make a decision. Instead of UNW simply enjoying the benefit of the sale, downstream sale, they will also want to participate as a shareholder in the distributorship company. So they negotiate to buy 26%. Yeah. Why? For that reason, for the same reason. They were not content to buying 25%, but 26%. There was also another transaction involving Toyota. Toyota Equipment wanted to participate in the downstream activity owned by UNW 100%. They also negotiated for 26%. So I think that's the benefit of acquiring 26%. Basically, that was a strategic reason. Basically, I think you can Google. The story is there, 26%. Basically, to me, strategic reason. Basically, they want to make sure the level of shareholding is such that UNW post acquisition cannot simply decide on matters considered important enough that will fall within the meaning of special resolution. That will fall within the listing of special resolution. So, well, if you are acting but the seller wanted to sell 25% lah, maximum. It is our policy, for example, that whenever we sell our stake, we never sell beyond 25%. If you are interested in selling, if you are interested in buying, you can buy. But if you are not interested, what can I say? Now, some companies adopt that as matter of corporate policy. Now, there was one company from Western Europe. I was helping them to advise in their investment in Malaysia. Now, what year was that? That was 2007, 8, basically. There was no certainty yet. There was one regulator, Foreign Investment Committee, FIC. The FIC has somewhat been disbanded. The only thing applicable now is basically land ownership of more than 20 million. So they were interested in a mining operation. So according to the law at the time, mining operation, maximum foreign shareholding is only 70%. You need to have a local party, ke Bumi party, ke that kind of stuff. And so I brought the client to go and see the people in EPU, because EPU was under FIC. FIC was under EPU, sorry. They said, look, Dato Azmi, our corporate policy is that we never have joint venture. In any market that we operate, we always operate 100% on 100% ownership basis. Yeah. If Malaysia is not prepared to allow us to have 100% ownership in this investment, we will say bye-bye to Malaysia, as simple as that. Yeah. Because sometimes, especially, it's quite difficult, Yeah. So, fortunately, when I look at the definition of manufacturing operation, I've shared. Manufacturing operation in Malaysian context is defined very widely. When a company undertakes an activity that falls within the meaning of manufacturing operation, the rules relating to land ownership is very relaxed. The rule of foreign ownership is also very relaxed. Basically. So I think we went to see Maida. Maida said, look, because this company is involved in manufacturing operations, and they are doing a lot of product from manufacturing activities, they are doing a lot of product categorization, serving different market, they would qualify as manufacturing company. Eventually, they were able to secure manufacturing license, thereby dispensing with the need to have a Malaysian shareholder, basically, So I think, ownership and good title to the shares. Now, if you are buying 30%, I think the commitment is substantial. 30% is not a small commitment. I think if you are buying the shares from someone who does not own control in that company, you need to be very careful. Why is this someone trying to? Maybe you need to dwell into the issue of, what kind of representations and warranties can you get from the selling shareholder? 40%. Okay, to me, in my practice, whenever you negotiate 40% stake, you must get full-blown right and warranties, 40% stake, or 49% stake, 50% stake. So I think from 40% to 100% stake, from the seller's point of view, you should try to get almost similar right and warranties. Yeah. From 40% upwards, basically, full-blown full-blown set of rep and warranties, basically, you know. Yeah. Of course, warranties are nowadays very complicated. The subject warranty is, I mean, sometimes a lot of, if you negotiate sale of shares, the issue of a lot of issues. I'll go through it. I mean, material warranties, rep warranties, statutory warranties, basically how do you the time frame, basically, you know. But I think if you are, to be honest, a good solicitor, a good lawyer, or a good in-house counsel, when you manage any transaction, your ability of making sure that post divestment there will not be any suit against you. I mean, there are many ways of managing that process through disclosure, through disclosure letter, through negotiation of the rep and warranties, basically, you know. Yeah. I mean, if you are acting for the purchaser, on the other hand, I've been involved in 2 or 3 instances in which we sued someone. We sued the vendor or the vendors for breach of warranties. Yeah, I mean, breach of warranties. You know, sometimes clients are desperate. I mean, in wanting the deal, they ask you to go slow, go easy. Then 3 years down the road, something major discovered, among others. So I think that now, I mean, if you're acting for the seller in 100% divestment, you can help the seller getting a better deal terms by working very hard, producing the draft. It's not typical for the draft to come from the seller, but I think a good lawyer is able to generate that. I did one transaction many years back for a 600 million or 670 million transaction, where anyway we reverse drafting, we reverse draft the document, basically, you know. I think nowadays, sometimes document will come from the seller, document will come from the buyer, you know. I think rather than giving commentary, as per your memo, you can do markup. And sometimes when you do markup, rather than saying, we would like to amend as follow, you know, as follows. You can give suggested wording straight away. I mean, as a counter proposal. Then ultimately the party will embark on the process of, finalizing the words, negotiating the words. A very tedious process, but ultimately 3-4 rounds of negotiation, they will come to their senses that ultimately we have got to be sensible to help clients arrive at conclusion. Now, first draft is always very one-sided. First draft coming from the seller, from the buyer will be one-sided, so one-sided. So you must have the ability of watering down the draft substantially and responding to them very quickly. Now, basically, a hallmark of a successful company is that the draft is always generated by your side. You negotiate with Petronas. Petronas, even 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they wouldn't want to sign a document which is generated by the counterparty. Even a simple letter, you draft a letter, give to Petronas, they will amend the letter, come back to you, basically. You know, sometimes they just check your letter aside, get their own letter drafted, basically, amongst others. So I think you hire a lawyer for companies, for corporations. Please hire a lawyer, a law firm, which is prepared to embark on the journey of drafting, on the task of drafting the document. Rather than commenting. When you are drafting a document, an agreement, your thought process is far more tedious, involved. You know, far more demanding compared to when you are reviewing a document. We were bidding for a project recently. It wasn't too big a project, but it wasn't maybe 200 million transaction. The moment client approached us, we started drafting the agreement. The client, would be a seller, you know. Say, look, if you want to get a good deal out of this, don't let the buyer to draft the documents. We started drafting documents even when the mandate was not secured. And we shared with them, this is what we have drafted for you. You know, eventually the mandate was secured, and we are still involved in the process. Once the announcement is made, I will share, basically. Anyway, okay. Any question so far? You know, any question? Okay, let's move on. Yeah.
Situation where, let's say, we got the draft from the other party.
You are the seller or buyer?
Maybe I'm the seller.
Yeah.
Actually, we are We are the buyer.
You're the buyer.
The buyer. We wanted to draft first, but then the seller gave their draft. And then there will be too much amendments that we want to do. They said that we don't agree with their draft. So kalau kita nak propose something pun macam lebih baik kita buat draft kita sendiri contoh. So bila in a situation where the other party dah bagi draft and then we instead of responding to their draft, kita just bagi macam kawan sebab lah, kita just bagi kita punya draft sendiri je. Kita basically kita ignore.
You produce your own draft?
Yes, kita ignore dia punya draft tu. So in a situation like that, macam kita nak resolve yang which draft should we follow in that situation.
Okay. Your company should have taken the initiative of drafting the document well before the draft was given by the other party at the planning stage. Yeah. Well, it's very simple. Commercial transaction is for you to negotiate. It's for you to negotiate. You do not be subdued by the negotiating position by the other party. I was involved in negotiation of Phase 2 gas project. Phase 2 gas project ni was the single most important gas project in Peninsular Malaysia that brought gas from Terengganu, from 4 gas fields to inlet of GBP in Pahang. Yeah. 2 lawyers from ESO were dedicated for this project on full-time basis. I was then 30-year-old in-house counsel. I mean, yeah. It was a problem dissecting for you to understand the gases agreement, the natural gas project agreement. But I think I went through it with the help of one petroleum engineer and we redrafted, literally clause by clause. Okay. So, I mean, to be honest, if the document had been presented by the other party, for you to produce your own draft, quite chaotic lah. I mean, a more the middle approach is for you to mark up on the draft that they produce. So as a draft produced by them, you do your own markup on that draft. I mean, that may entail deletion of relevant paragraph. If clause 10 is not sensible, you may remove the entire clause 10, plant another clause 10. So ultimately, but you have got to have the power, you have got to have the ability of articulating, look, your draft is not acceptable, amongst others. I was forced in that kind of situation once by one law firm. I was brought into one project quite late. And suddenly, there was a meeting call. When I looked at the draft, at the meeting, the draft was given to me. So that was the first time. We were representing the seller. That's correct. But it was a share swap. A listed company, we buy asset from another listed company. The buyer will offer the seller who is selling the asset an option of subscribing for the shares of the listed company, basically. So I think you need to have 2 set of warranties lah. Warranty by the seller, warranty by the buyer. Because why? Because of share swap, you see. There should be corresponding warranties. So when I look at the document, I said, look, this document is so one-sided. I don't know, the document, when you draft document, you don't say third draft or draft, when you give to the counterparty, you just say put draft date, never ever say that first draft, second draft, because that represents, that disclose how much time, how much effort you have put in. So when that document said, this document is so one-sided, I don't think I'm going to use this draft. I will amend the draft and give you a fresh draft or, a redraft, a revamp to this draft to make it more balanced, to address our concerns. Then the counterparty, the chief negotiator of the other party was furious. Hey, we have, our 2 CEOs have agreed to get the document signed next week. How long will you take to get a revised draft issued? So what was, can you guess my response? Sorry?
Immediately.
Tomorrow, the meeting took place around, I think, 3 p.m. I remember. Tomorrow by 9 a.m., you get a revised draft from me. You get a revised draft from me tomorrow by 9 a.m. So I went home. I went back to the office. Not when I didn't go home. I went back to the office. There were 9 lawyers with me at that time. I was with Hisham Sobri and Kadir. Masa tu 1997, 98 lah. And there was no scanning machine was not too advanced yet lah. Or advanced, but there was the technology is not as advanced today. So, look, we have got a job today. The document was 70-page document, 70-page document. I said, you cannot go home tonight until the task is completed. I started assigning clause 1 to clause 5. I need you to. Then I went through with them, suggested amendments. Then they were on. They were on the 5 or 6 of them, lah. Then finally by 11, they managed to get the suggested wordings incorporated, because you have to synchronize, right, for the entire clause. Someone amends clause 3 here, someone doing clause 15, for example, clause 15 is affected. Then by 8:15, I sent out the dispatch lah, to the counterparty. I went home for the sleep. But that was when I was young lah. So I think ultimately, as I mentioned, at the juncture when you start negotiating, you have to, as in-house counsel, you have to start figuring out lah, how I'm going to deal with this, basically. So I think, as I mentioned, for example, you negotiate with, big companies. Big companies, YTL, Genting. I've had the benefit of negotiating with them, basically. The lawyers that they work and the lawyers that they use, for example, means, so I think itulah. That was another question just now.
We're talking about negotiation. To what extent we can negotiate? There is the saying that when lawyers negotiate, they go to the extent that the deal might not go through because when we are so detailed. So how aggressive that we can negotiate, or should we just give in to certain things that they put forward to us, either way, on behalf of purchaser or vendor?
As lawyers, we are guided by the management, by the leadership. Okay. Our job is to assist the company, the leadership, to achieve the best results. Sometimes you may be at a critical, critical stage of deciding on business issues and legal issues. I would say it's not for us to make the final decision for the client. The deal is the client's deal, not our deal, but it's for us to sort of facilitate. And I think you can add value by giving your own assessment based on experience. Macam there's a Malay saying kan, kelipan ikan dia, kilas ikan di air, you can see kan. Yeah. So you need to develop that kind of position. I was involved. I was advising one US company. It was a UK company. Eventually, it was listed. It was acquired by a US company. So basically, the group is listed on the New York stock market. They came here to buy one plant, sort of manufacturing plant. Wasn't too big, 90 million. The seller of the plant in this instance was also a seller in another transaction for which there was a suit. There was a suit involving the seller in our transaction, but in another transaction. Yeah, so I said, look, we are negotiating with someone who has been labelled with a civil suit for breach of right and warranties. Yeah. So in the negotiation, I was saying to him, look, I was negotiating with the principal at night. They were advised by a big law firm. I said, look, we need to exercise extra cautious here because of the position that you are in. I'm not saying anything else because the case is still ongoing, you see. We wouldn't want to be in the same position, for example, having to sue you or... So that's why we are exercising extra vigilance in our scrutiny. And our documents are also demanding because we wouldn't want to be in the same... We have the benefit of seeing another case which was ongoing involving you, involving him. He just stood up and walked out from the room. If this is the way you are looking at this transaction, might as well call off the deal, I was worried about the client losing the deal. Maybe I've said some strong words, amongst others. But I think he calmed down and came back. Eventually, the case was settled. The case was signed, the deal was signed. And then we were, 15% of the purchase price was to be kept by a stakeholder. So I proposed to them, to the vendor, because 50% of 90 million lah, tak banyak kan, 50, I mean, I'm happy to have the money kept by joint stakeholder lah, my firm and the vendor's law firm. But eventually they agreed to us keeping the money, because when we act as stakeholder, the fee more or less is paid by our client lah. He will achieve some saving by not letting the joint stakeholders' money to be kept by stakeholders' money not be kept by joint stakeholders lah, in that sense. So that's it basically. So I think if you do a proper assessment, if you do proper assessment, sometimes give your report to your client, to your management, and the report has got commercial sensibilities lah, has got commercial sense. Sometimes when you are involved in negotiation, a particular position taken by the other party, what are your positions? The most, you can outline, the private position, the second private position, the baseline position, right? The non-starter position. Kan? If you can outline that process, and outlining this process is just not a pure legal punya analysis lah. Sometimes business analysis, for example. So that's why I suppose you need to understand the business world, and in my case, because I'm involved with as corporate directors, I understand. So I think we need to be creating value. Now, some companies like ExxonMobil, even Petronas before, there must always be someone on the board who is a lawyer. Contoh. PNB, for example. Kalau PNB company ni, in all investing companies, at least accountant must be a member of the board. Yeah. In some instances, a lawyer, for example. Or an industry expert. So for us to be able to be an effective legal advisor, in-house counsel or solicitor, we need to understand the commercial world, basically. It's a process. When I was young years ago, Petronas sent me for one training in Dundee. I was seated next to one guy from Nigeria. I was a young junior lawyer. He was asking me, Azmi, you were saying that you were involved in a lot of PSC negotiations. Sometimes people ask you about commercial issues, accounting issues. What's your position? My response to him was very simplistic. When it comes to accounting issues, you leave it to the accountants. You won't dwell into it, right? That was my simplistic answer. But nowadays, you need to understand what are the issues, for example, what are the issues that you must pick up in the course of due diligence? As lawyers, as in-house counsel, sometimes financial due diligence report are not given to you, right? Yeah, that's one example. Yeah. I would say there's a flaw for us acting as lawyers when we don't have the benefit of, looking at financial due diligence report, right? Financial due diligence report will uncover a lot of issues too that need to be captured in the legal document. But your legal reports will be given to the accountants. If you do a due diligence report, the accounting firm tend to be a bigger firm than your law firm or my law firm. Your report will get disclosed to the accountants. We were doing one transaction recently. The financial due diligence was undertaken by PwC. Financial due diligence, commercial due diligence, we were doing the legal due diligence. Our report was shared with them, but the report was not shared with us. You must ask. I was doing one transaction on the way in US. One transaction in oleochemical plant in US. I said, look, we are going to US to negotiate the document. Where are the financial due diligence report? Not given to us. Hey, can you share with us? Only in the flight they give it to us, for example. So I think my point is that we need not be detached from the commercial side. We need to go into the commercial side, be knowledgeable, try to understand the issues, try to add value, amongst others. Okay?
How do you strike the balance between the commercial and also the legal part? For example, when we're dealing with big companies like Petronas, they always insert clauses like GDPR, all this human data protection policy. But then you know that companies like Khazanah will always object all these clauses, this template that so-called the best practice for their standard. But because we are Malaysia, we only comply to PDPA and etc. But this kind of very miscellaneous, very final clause, be a stumbling block for your agreement to be closed. So then your board will be pushing you to close the deal, but then you see that these kind of clauses will open you for liabilities that you know that will be problem
In future.
In future, right? How do you manage between the legal exposure and also the business?
Petronas gave me scholarship. Petronas now is not a pure corporate entity. Petronas is almost a quasi-nation, quasi-government. Really. When Petronas negotiate with you, you better be prepared for it, to be honest. Petronas is, not one Petronas, but it's a fair statement. Petronas is now encroaching into the areas of solar energy, right? Water, amongst others. The sheer financial power of Petronas is massive. Sheer financial power of Petronas. So when you give Petronas, you need to be extra careful. I'm not doing any work for Petronas now. From time to time, I represent companies that negotiate transactions with Petronas. Sometimes So I suppose the final assessment of the risk, of the business risk, is assumed by the board lah. Kan? What we not want is that we fail miserably in our job of identifying the risk for the dissection by the board. As long as we've done that, if a client disagree with your view, don't feel sad about it, because it's not your deal. To be honest, I'm very possessive. I'm very possessive of the client. I breathe the client's problem. I live with the client's problem. I want the client to succeed. I want the client to succeed because I want the client to come back to me, among others. There was one client I negotiated with. A big transaction involving a US big, fund company. We concluded the whole process in 16 days. 13, 14 documents, literally 8 hours, 8 hours in office. 7, maybe 10 years ago. The deal was so one-sided. I've not negotiated a deal so one-sided in favor of the other party, for example. So I was not too happy, but the client said, don't worry, Azmi, we look at the big picture. Okay, we look at the big picture. And we raise a good fee for that, basically. So I think as long as we have done our job, and especially if we can give analysis, the management, the leadership of the company will appreciate your efforts. Even if they say, no, we thank you for your good recommendation, but this is a deal that we are prepared to take the risk and move forward, amongst others. Okay? So any other question? So let's continue. Now, distinction between private companies. Distinction between private companies, there is one main distinction. There's one main distinction. One main distinction that is relevant for you. The shares for a private company cannot be approved to be transferred to you unless, cannot be transferred to you unless approved by the board. Yeah. So I think, which means buying shares in a private company especially, you must make sure that the purchase price is not paid until the shares are registered. Almost concurrent transaction. Now, there was one case of iMolek case. iMolek case was a very... Now, listed company, when you buy shares in listed company through CDS, shares are transferred immediately. You pay to your broker, you purchase, you place order to your stockbroker, pay to the stockbroker, 2 days later, 2 plus 1, T plus 2, you get the shares credited to your account because CDS. But 30 years ago, before CDS account was introduced, you have to have the shares registered physically, You need to extricate, you need to take out the share certificate from the stockbroker, and then pay stamp duty, go to the stamp office and register, for example, That's the process. So I think the iMolek case was a very clear example. This took place before CDS. I think iMolek was making a bid to privatize one school opposite the old Sanabi building, Jalan Raja Laut. There's one school, I think, Batu Road School, Batu Road School. Suddenly, Insas, a company that was somewhat associated with 20%, Insas, company associated with Tan Sri Vincent, purchased a block of shares in iMolek. So having paid the purchase price, wanted to have the shares registered in the name of Insas lah. But the board of iMolek simply refused to have the shares transferred in clear breach of the listing rules. Just blatantly refused. So in other words, in that given example, this was prior to the introduction of CDS account. Nowadays, you buy shares in a listed company, there is no issue of getting the shares because shares will be transferred to you. Through CDS Bank, as long as payment is made. I think that case altered the scenario, the circumstances, the provisions, the landscape. So in other words, if you are buying shares in listed company, you could be subject to not being able to register the shares, let alone in a private company. Now, in the past, when I started my practice 34 years ago, 34 years ago with Dato Taru, competition agenda was very simple. You meet up for a competition meeting, you exchange the transfer form, you hand over, the seller will hand over the share certificate, transfer form, resolutions, among others. The buyer will issue check or sometimes banker's draft, and that's it. The adjudication of the transfer form is done post-completion. But nowadays, because of the iMolek case, there is a provision, we normally adjudicate. I would not, in our standard document, we will not allow purchase price to be paid unless and until the adjudication process has been done. And in some instances, we say that, look, we would like to have the shares, be registered before we actually release the money, for example. So I think which means you need to have provisions incorporated in the agreement that allows adjudication. And normally you get a stiff resistance from the seller because the share certificate most likely would still be in the possession of the seller. Why on earth you are pressuring the solicitor for the seller to do adjudication? And normally, because adjudication, sometimes there's a process lah. When you adjudicate too early, the shares, the adjudication result gets out fast. You don't pay on time, but you can manage with stamp office. Now, we typically have adjudication done 1 week before expected completion. Expected completion. And stamp office now is quite efficient lah, in that instance, So by having adjudication brought forward, by the time you complete the transaction, you pay the purchase price, you want the shares to be registered in your name immediately. If possible, when you hand over the check or banker's draft, the record of the members is updated, amongst others. Okay, so what are the approvals process? Now, there are two approvals. There are 3 categories of things that you must be aware of. Firstly is, internal approvals. The internal approvals are board's approval, shareholders' approval. Second one is external approvals. External approvals, approval of the EPU. If you are buying a company with land ownership now, EPU is very strict when it comes to bumi stake lah. A lot of transactions, sometimes EPU disapprove. I'm on the board of UNFD, I'm on the board of SPSTIA. Sometimes SPSTIA so land we not get approval from the government because not enough bumi content in the company lah, unfortunately. So external approval. For Malaysia now, except for regular industry like bank negara or insurance, now Sarawak government is trying to buy more shares in Affin Bank. So they're waiting for bank negara's approval, for example, or EPU for land approval, for land, transaction involving land. Other than that, I think the Malaysian sector is generally quite open. It's quite open market, basically, so internal approval, external approval. And then you have got another set of approval, another set of items that must be fulfilled before a transaction is completed. Okay, contoh. It's not in nature of approval, whether external or internal, an event that will have to take place. For example, I mean, you are buying a company, but the company has given a loan to the seller, shareholders loan. I mean, the company has given loan to each shareholder, not loan from shareholder to the company, rather the shareholder has taken some money from the company. So you are therefore buying this company subject to that loan being rectified, being sorted out. Or you are buying a company, this company has signed an agreement with the controlling shareholder in which you occupy the premises of the selling shareholder, amongst others. So you want this to be addressed. One example was the case of Hong Leong Bank. Last time, Mui Bank was owned by Mui Group. Now, in 1990, what year was that? 97, 98, 99, thereabout. Mui decided to sell the bank to Hong Leong. Hong Leong